Okay, so I started streaming on YouTube. And then I'm going to also start recording this. There we go. I just need to make sure that you guys can see YouTube. Okay, cool. I think this will be the correct link. There we go. Okay, let me know if there's any problems with the YouTube link and the streaming. Should be relatively fine, I think. Let's give another 5 or so minutes for people to join. Start. I have no clue how to do that on YouTube. Is it not? Yeah, no, that's what kind of Pookie told me to do, is just not do Discord and do it all through YouTube. I suppose I could share my screen on here too. Okay. You guys can read the text on the screen fine? The slides? We're about to start. Okay, cool. Okay, let's start. So this is not a how-to scripts lesson, by the way. I will be showing examples and showing some of the tools that Bot With Us does support. But if you wish to learn actually how to set up a basic script and then do basic usages of the API, copy this somehow. I will link everyone to Cypher's original YouTube video. And you can go watch that. So I'm assuming when everyone coming into this is going to have a basic understanding of Java and how to set up a basic script. So let's begin on the roadmap. So I'm going to discuss everything related to variables in the game, varps, varbits, inventory varbits, varsies, varstrings. Not too much on varsies and varstrings because they're not particularly helpful. I'm going to demonstrate how you can find varbits and varbits, go through each config type. That will be a brief, as all it is just information. I will discuss briefly on components, specifically on params and properties. And then after we do that, I will go over some of the newer features in the Bot With Us API. Some of them a bit older, but uncommon for most to use. I'll go over the Quest API and the Achievement API. These are very simple, but I'll go over them briefly. I'll go over the event bus. I know Cypher went over the event bus, but I'm going to specifically go over custom events. and then script communication using the event bus, how two different scripts from two different authors can talk to each other. I will then go over some basic script configurations, and then I'll go over object serialization, which may or may not help you more. I'm going to go into a little bit more advanced material, such as the script class versus the looping and ticking classes and threads related to that. I'm then going to go into invoking CS2, what the client script 2 is, and how you can use that in your scripts. And then I'm going to do a brief overview of navigation. I don't know if we're going to have time to do everything here today, but I will certainly try to do that. Ask questions too if you need to. Post them in chat, and I'm sure one of the mods will um, let me know if there's questions, because I don't feel like I'm getting. Maybe I should change my status then. Is that not going to auto go away? So variables, let's go over varps. So you can read varps. Varps are practically 32-bit integers that represent a number of game states. So these will allow a player to determine, say, your health, your progress on your quests, to anything from what should be, like if a button is enabled or disabled on an interface, etc. Varps are very powerful. Varbits, on the other hand, are like miniature versions of this. You can think as varps and varbits as the varps are like a box. You could have many different varbits within the box, but those varbits are tied to the varp, so they're associated with the varp. You cannot have a varbit that is also a varp. You cannot have a varbit without the associated varp tied to it. Some examples you could do with this is, for example, varp 1176 is determining your progress when you're crafting an item, say. You could do this through, you check 0, meaning that you're not crafting anything, or you finished. Oops. It should be. Can you not see it? It's is my slideshows not showing? Okay. Should be in the YouTube stream. I will hold on a minute, see if it's. You want me to go back and re-explain some things? I can do that, so you get a chance to see the slides. Okay. Can everyone see the code from the image? Fine. I want to make sure that that's the thing. Otherwise, I can hop into my IDE and show you there too. Okay. Second. So then, so this is okay. Let me reiterate. So Barbit 1176 again is the crafting progress. Turns out that this value, or this varp, will be used whether or not you have, will be set whether or not you actually have that crafting progress interface up or not. So essentially, you on the last two lines here, we can wait till we start. Once we click the component or the dialog interface, whatever is what. And in this particular case, I was doing corrupted ore and Griff. You can use it to wait till you start, and then after that, you can do another check to see if we're finished. Same thing with varbits. Varbits are, again, the smaller variants of varps. They're associated always with a varp, and they can range from different sizes. So you can have a varbit that's between 0 and 5, a varbit that's just 0 or 1. It will always be associated. And I'm going to go a little bit more in depth on this when I do a demonstration on how you would find these. I will, but with us also supplies dumps for information related to varbits and varps, and I'll show you guys that. Inventory varbits act as, if I'm going too fast, let me know, and I'll try to go a bit slower. Anyway, inventory varbits and varbits are relatively the same thing. Their only key difference is you're associated not with a player or an NPC, but with an item in your inventory. This is more in connection with, say, your heat in smithing or your invention XP on an item. Kind of perks you have in your invention to the invention item level. Do I have it? Yeah. So a demonstration of this would be the Divino-Manic in divination. You can retrieve this through simply just calling var manager gut var. You will pass in the inventory ID, which is the identifier to say your backpack, your equipment. There's banks associated with the inventory ID, etc. You would then pass in the slot. In this case, 3 would be your weapon slot, your primary weapon slot, and then the varbit ID. In this particular case, you could check in Divino-Manic, you can check empty and fill charges, and then you can interact with it and all the other stuff. But this allows you to read specific information off tooltips. The client will know what you're hovering over, and in our particular case, we don't care what we're hovering over, so we can read this directly from the slot. Yes, I briefly discussed the relationship between these two. Again, let me reiterate, because I understand that this kind of thing is a little bit. This is unique to RuneScape in a sense. They did it for efficiency and because it was in like 2002, 2005-ish. Anyway, varps and varbits are associated. You cannot have a varbit without a varp associated with it. So, and I will show how you get the varbits from the varp using our variable debugger tool. But again, the varps are like a box. The box can hold inside the box. You can have many varbits, and then you can take those varbits out and read them. But overall, the box itself is what is sent to the client, and then the client can pick stuff out of that box when it needs to. Just a brief explanation of the varc or a variable client. So this is similar to the varps and varbits, except there is an additional one, string. Do I have that? Okay. So there is the string representation of a varc that can hold anything from input. Actually, it's primarily used for input, and I went too far. But varcs are temporary solutions. The client primarily uses them for temporary storage. Not particularly useful unless you really, really know what you're doing. Navigation uses a lot of these. Okay. So I am going to demonstrate now how one would go about finding varps, variable players, and then I will show you guys how to cross-reference them with stuff like this. So these are dumps that I will go over one by one, but right now we're going to focus on the varbits one, specifically on var 577. If I go to RuneScape, everyone can see the screen okay for RuneScape? Yeah, so there should be, on the site, there should be a page on the wiki. Maybe sadness or varbs. Yeah, Vixen, that is correct. due to the inconsistency in the content systems, yes, that's correct. You could use inventories too. For example, the ore box is based off varps and varbits, but the wood box is not. The wood box is based off an inventory. So there is inconsistency in how developers at JX design their content structure, but primarily you are correct. That's again a varp is a varbit is has associated varp with it always. So when you're looking at a varp, it's not going to immediately pop out, and I'll demonstrate this here with the variable debugger here. So if we clear this, make this interface a bit more. I'll show you guys how to use the varbit debug and the var value. So if I open this interface, the Lodestone network, and then click this, you'll see that we have this pop up. Now I don't have any quick charges. I don't think BizWax is free to play at all, but okay. But normally, you can enable and disable, and you see this value change. So what you can also do too is you can, if you know that this value is changing and you want to ignore everything, you can check this watch button, and then you can filter by watch. You can only see this. So in order to get to the varbits linked to this, you would take the varbit ID and you would go to the varbit dump here, varbits.json. Then you would search the var ID to 5773, and this is going to be associated with your player. So there's different types of domains. There's player, there's clan, there's NPC, there's inventory. I believe in here, the inventory, maybe? Yeah, oh, sorry, not the inventory. So the domain type would be specifically related to an item. So I believe it'll be object. So it's a little confusing, but object is technically an item. So let me go back now to 3. So these two values here represent like where in the varp it's being stored. In this case, if both of these are 0, then the value can only ever be 0 or 1. So given that, we can take this variable ID 28622, and we can go to the varbit debug, and we can watch this particular var ID. So now when I click this, you can see that this is changing from a 0 to 1. And then you know that, okay, so this varbit ID is associated with whether the quick teleports are active or not active. I tested this on another account with charges, so I know this one here is associated with how many quick charges you have. So you could do the same thing. You can watch this, but I have 0, so it's gonna always stay at 0. Is there any questions with this? Because this might be a little bit more in depth than Dixon's typing. I'll let him finish up. So in my particular example, you'll have 28622. This varbit represents a value at 00 in the varp itself, and this will represent whether you have quick charges enabled or not. Same thing, yeah. And then 28623, you can do what's it called? Educated guesses when it comes to varbits, on what they're related to. So, example, if I go back here, you can see that both these values here, both these varbits here and here are associated with the same varp, variable player. So what I can do is I can assume that this is also somehow related to quick charges, and because this is such a bigger range between 1 and 12, you could probably assume that this is the quick charge count, how many quick charges you actually have. In this case, I have 0, but I tested this before, and this is exactly what it is. So you can cross-reference variable IDs changing in here with this dump if you search here, and then you can link the varp IDs to the varbits, and then you can test that by watching. Now there's no direct association between the varp and varbit itself, only from the varbit to the varp itself. So you can't just say, oh, I want varbit 5773, and then get all the varbits linked to it. It doesn't work unless you iterate over or go through all of varbits. So that's why you just can't. That's why you have to cross-reference it through the dump that I have provided in the past, and I will continue to provide for the latest content and all that. But same kind of idea. If I go to the bank, and then go here, and then say I click, let's make a tab. Click a tab. Stop. Don't need to watch. Click this tab. We got varbit 110. See how the value is all. It doesn't make any sense when you click tabs like this, but it does change. So we could take varp 110, go back to the dump, and I believe these dumps are available to scripters and members of the community. So we can look through, okay, so we have 110 here, 0 to 9. Maybe this is it. This could be the varbit that represents what tab is selected. Then we can go over here. We can clear this, watch this, and then select the tab. Nope, that doesn't appear like associated with that. Maybe it's this one. As you can see, all the varbits that I'm now trying to look at is all associated with 110, which is what changes when I do this again. Watch that. See if that changes. Nope. So there's just many different. Try. Just kind of walk through and trial and error these varbits until you notice a value change. Bank has a lot of varbits. Yeah. There you go. So you can see varbit 45141 is associated with the selected tab. Tab 1 is obviously everything. And tab 2, if I create another tab, this becomes tab 3, tab 2, tab 1. So you can, that's how you would find different varbits associated with the actual varbs. And then you can see what changes here. Oh, look. Okay. Yep. Okay. Varbit 45139 is associated if what you have selected. 0 being the backpack, 2 being the equipment, and 1, I don't have any summon familiars, but this is a free-to-play account, but summoning is probably either 3 or 1. And that same thing with, maybe I have it here. No. But if you clear this, select this, okay, so this appears correct, 3, 4. Now you can determine what kind of output you have, etc. And again, does this make sense to everyone? Let's see. Yeah, I see that. Okay. Yes, Gibson. again, there's always when it comes to var bits, it is always associated with a varp, and I guess you could think of it like a grouping or a category. The varp has a category and it represents different things within that category. The varbits do. Then the varbits represent specific things, like whether your teleport interface is toggled or not, what tab you have selected in the bank, etc. Varbit 28623. It is the it's how much. If I have 10 quick teleports and I use one, then that will go down to 9, and that's what 286 Barbit 28623 represents. It represents the amount of quick charges you have available to use. Okay, so yeah, I can demonstrate how to check charges. It is go. Oh, I'll put, I don't know what script file collector. Okay, just ignore everything here. Check charges. Quick. So you can make sure give orbit value, and then I need to go because I'm not brilliant in the sense that I remember everything. 28622. So you can read this var bit, and then boolean is quick charge active. So if quick charges is active, just ignore that. And oops. Then you do var manager get var value. And then for 2862863, you can then check if you have greater than 0 charges. If you have greater than 0 charges, then we can quick teleport. So essentially the nav does this check too when it needs to, and then it knows whether or not like it could determine better routes depending on how fast you can teleport around. Does that make sense? Well, that's when you got to do some playing around. When it comes to timers and buffs, normally those would be in the temporary values because they're not persistent. Like you can't log in and log out, and um, those would necessarily, yeah. Um, in the client side, it would probably be under a varc or a varp. You can use the debugger tool I just demonstrated to see if you find it. Some things are going to be harder than others to find. Some things you just can't find easily. An example of this would be the archaeology soil box. I will demonstrate other methods of trying to find these later on when I cover some config types. Uh, that okay. Well, let's just pivot again. This is simply what I did. So I just created another class and an interface that takes a looping script in using generics, and then I just did this. And then in the development state, I could just set the script here, and then under the looping, I just call this the script run this. Typically, you can't register multiple looping scripts like this, but you can change like a more complex state of the. But you could do it like this if you wish. Okay, go back to this. Okay, so we're gonna look at config types or definitions. These are structures that the game uses. Um, you could probably just read this. The game has a cache. These caches store everything asset related to the game. So like models, animations, sprites or images, textures. The definitions or config types tell what to do with these, how to represent them in the world, where to place models, etc. I'm going to briefly run through config type examples. Some of these may not be useful. Some of these may be useful to you overall. So let's go do that. I gotta find where type examples. Okay, top bar here. So let's start off with. Oops, we have after this. Okay. So I'm gonna go back up to the roadmap here. Oops. Disable the quick scroll. So we're gonna go over quests, achievements, NPCs, and down the list here. So I'm gonna go over quests. So again, VARPs and VARBITs will be integrated into almost everything you do in the game when writing scripts. So in quest types, you can get the pre-progress VARPs. Don't worry if this is too complicated. I have abstracted this out, and I will briefly cover what I did with the Quest API and the Achievement API later down the road after we finish with components. Yes, components. But I'll briefly demonstrate what you can do with quests. If you want the raw information from the game cache, you can read it. I don't care. 222 is Plague's End, by the way. So this is the Plague End quest. I also have a dump that you guys can look at. Getting structs, achievements, quests, and you'll get kind of like the same structure here. The start location. Little complicated to get into that, but progress is Varbit. You'll get the Varbit ID. You'll get the start. So if this Varbit ID is not 0, if it's 1, then the quest is started. And then anything in between 1 and 400 is like the progress of your quest. The difficulty of the quest, whether it's members, how many quest points you get for a reward, the skill requirements for to start the quest, what quests you need to start the quests, and this will represent the IDs. So if you want to try to figure out what's what, you can take 167 and you can go back up to here and you can search ID to 167. That would be one of the dependent quests. Now, each one of these quests could have dependent quests of their own. It can get very recursive. But then you'll have the required quest points to start the quest. This is related to interface stuff, what image is going to be displayed for it, the name of the quest, and then any other related information, miscellaneous information. This looks like just the descriptions and what you could get as a reward, etc. And then going on to the achievements are relatively similar. Have a lot less information. You just have the VARP prerequisites, the VARBIT prerequisites, the VARP requisites, and so forth. I'm gonna get into like yeah, it's again VARPs and VARBITs are gonna be like integrated into almost everything you think of. Going on to NPCs. Now we're getting into entities. Entities have a lot of information in them. If you can, one being I think a man. Again, I will have dumps that you can go through without needing to do any like major debugging in game. Do I have NPCs open? No. Okay, doesn't matter. But NPCs will have the name, the options, the right-click options it has to get to the varped and varp states for the NPC. This is what the Zamrock Mage happens. So you'll have a mini quest. I don't remember the name of the mini quest for the Abyss for ring crafting. Zamrock Mage will have what is called a current state. So you can, or what is it? A transformation, transformed type, and depending on a player varp or varbit, um, you can check if it is just by doing varbit varp ID does not equal -1, or actually probably just no -1. Zero is technically -1. If it's not -1, then it uses a varp, sorry, and then otherwise it'll use the varbit. If both of these are -1, then yeah, then there's no transformation associated with it. But you could determine different states. So an NPC can morph into different NPCs. So you most commonly get this at bosses, where a boss morphs into a different model and all that stuff. In a lot of cases, depending on how the content was originally written, they could just spawn a new NPC, or they could morph the current NPC, reset its health to whatever it wants, and then this is what determines the stage, etc. I'll get into params a bit more, but this is like miscellaneous data. Um, if a particular what do you call it? The particular varbit is set, then when it builds its context menu from the options, there may be a parameter that determines, oh, this is an additional option, like talk to or attack, or it might remove it. Same thing with scene objects. So RuneScape calls them locations. We call them scene objects for clarity of purpose, because locations may not be maybe a bit confusing. But you'll also have the same thing. You'll have name and you'll have options. You'll have also the same thing as NPCs. Scene objects can be transformed. This is most evident in farming. So you're able to determine the growth stage of like a tree or a bush based off this. Inventory config types or definitions are very simple. 9.3 being the backpack and 9.4 being equipment. You can it would be you can use the variable debugger tool, but it could be difficult because you're also just combating stuff. I'm not actually entirely sure if you could be anywhere. You might need to be near it for the server to send it to the client. Go through the NPC definitions. Let me open up NPCs. Really? Yeah. Okay. So you could go through NPCs. This. Let's see. What's a boss that has a stage? Let's see. No. Nope. Different. another Raziel. Maybe this one. Yes, here we go. Okay, so this Raziel. What just happened? Okay, well, I don't know. So there's this varbit, and then these NPC IDs. It really depends on how you develop the content, but I can demonstrate. You'll have to do some digging around when it comes to this, because okay, maybe this guy has. Oh, so it doesn't look like he morphs into anything else, but let's see if there's more than one of them. We're not going to spend too much time on this. No, okay. Well, it depends on how the content is, but the Catholic Queen has 2 stages. So we can try looking up the Queen as attack. Bosses might be a bit complicated, a bit more complicated. I'm not going to spend too much time diving into the stages, but there are NPCs that can transform into different NPCs, etc. And that's demonstrated through that's linked to how what stage of Varbits are in Varps and Varbits. Let's go back here. Then we get into item config types, item definitions. So okay, yeah. So and this is where it kind of gets powerful. So you can so if you say you have an Elder Rune plate body, you can get the ID and you can get the name, the category. So items have associated categories with them. So for example, plate bodies could be category. Well, I don't know. We can look to like. There's always these dumps you can look through. I have items open somewhere. Here we go. Okay, Elder Rune plate body. Is this also an Elder Rune plate body? Yeah. Okay. So Elder Rune plate body, you can get like it has everything. Zoom, price for the shop price. Is the item stackable? The item members. Just everything really, and it has also the options. But when you get into stuff like the miscellaneous category 7, yeah, okay, let me go back to category 7. So each item is grouped in essentially to a specific category. Category 0 being miscellaneous, that could be anything. Um, so if I search category 7 now, it should bring me to another item. There's Elder Rune. There's Elder Rune again. Pop that one more time. So broken Elder Rune. So it appears like category 7 is anything related to maybe the Elder Rune play body. So so you can search or go through your backpack, your bank, and you can search for category 7, which will spit back any Elder Rune related item. More specifically, then we can get into, and I'll get into the miscellaneous information here. Yeah, armor is correct there when he says Varps and Varbits are related for quests primarily. So you can get into parameters, miscellaneous data. I would, well, sort of. but you can get certain things like what tier is this, which is 90. Demonstrate that by going here. Maybe I'm on the wrong. Let's hop back to this ID. That doesn't help me. There you go. Okay, so and spot like there's a ton of information. You really don't know. You can probably do an educated guess based off the values here. But I know for a fact 750, it's 90. It also could be this. This could represent the same thing, but 90 is the tier. 2675 is the struck. I'll get into what this is later. So this is like telling us what is required almost to make this item. The required bars to smith. I'm not entirely sure about that one, but it is 5, and I checked this. Could be 5, um, but params contain a lot of information about an item. 528 appears to be an option. Check charges. Actually, 528 is related to the bank. So when you open up your bank and on your inventory, 528 is used to like any specialized options that will be included in your bank. So if you deposit 156 and then check charges will also be an option available to you. 528 will determine that, and Bought with Us incorporates this into the item type. When you request the item type, we'll do a post processing of that item type, item definition, whatever you want to call it, and we'll include that in there for you. Typically for interactions, it's 8 or 9. There's 2 specialized options for that. Then you'll have stuff like equipment slot, cost, and brand exchange buy limit, and other data. Cost is the shop cost, like if you go to the general store. Animation types also have params. There's not too much here that you can do that you can already do in queries. Enum types are just another type of data structure that the game uses to read and store information. It's a little bit more complicated. It's a key value pair kind of thing. So you would pass in a key, you get a value out, and then and if that value doesn't exist, then you want to represent the value as default type. There's dumps again for all of this too. Enums, you can walk through the enums, see what there are. I don't know if these are entirely all bosses, but this might be like, for example, the list. Oh, okay, this is for the Christmas event last year. Um, the outfit you got had different color scheme or color you could choose from. This appears to be the list of all the names that displayed in the interface for that color. So this kind of information is stored in enum types and different other types, etc. And now the struct type. So let's go back to the Elder Room plate body. So we can get the item, the Elder Room plate body, get the item ID, and then in the miscellaneous or the params of that item, you can get 2675, which is the Elder Bar struct ID. Then you can get the struct ID, and then you can get like the name of the item or the item ID of that specific item. So we can hop to this struct, which is 2675. Gotta figure that out. I was there. Oh no, I'm yeah. So this is the struct that it would represent 43312. Now, in order to, you have to do some trial and error with the params. Copy and paste values. Go into here, hop over to the ID, see if the information in the struct or enum is even remotely closely related to it. If it is, then you could assume. But this will give you information like the ID of the actual item, or the name of the item, and other information that you would have to play around with to see what's going on here. Could be anything related to interfaces, to size or animations or whatever. You get many different things. So there's a lot. So again, structured enums can actually have specific types associated with them, so they can actually point to structures or items or stuff. So there could be like a struct of all of these. So if I do, see, okay, that probably is not it. Anyway, I'm not going to go to it, but like an enum type could have a list of an output type of type struct. Yeah, an output type of struct, and then this value here, then you can know, oh, this is a struct ID. So we can go back to the struct and then jump to it, and then it'll give you, oh, this is the Demon Hunter outfit. So it's something related to the Demon Hunter outfit, and then a bunch of information that you can get off that. And you can read all of this stuff too, and that we expose all of this. Big manager, get struct type, get elder bar, and you could derive a lot of information and write scripts that that would conform to these enums or structs. So some of the enums or structs could have like a list of supported potions you want to make, and you can use that. That will also give you like the ingredients for those potions, the IDs of those potions. So you could build a script that reads these information so that you don't have to manually update it every time, say, RuneScape adds a potion. It'll just be in that structure enum, and then that'll just immediately, your script will just immediately support that potion. Data, this is a relatively databases. So they have another type called databases. This is also just another way of them to store information. I couldn't find a good example of this really, but I will demonstrate here. So databases, you'll have a table, you'll have a row, you have a column. It could give you information and other information like sprites, maybe item IDs, descriptions that are on interfaces. Who knows? Maybe there's information you could use in your scripts here, but it's simply just a database of information that you can utilize. Maybe Armor has a better example. Works more closely with this kind of stuff. Menu option bar IDs. Yeah. Um, uh, I'm not gonna get into that right now, Gibson. But you can always message me after the stream, and then I can get into that with you. See if we can't find better ways to narrow stuff down. Yeah. Okay. So now we can. You guys have any questions about any of those? Let me know. All good. Any questions about the config types or definitions? Otherwise, I'll move on to a brief overview of more uncommon things interfaces can provide you guys with and components. All right, let's go to interfaces then. Okay, interfaces and components. So one of the crucial things is that RuneScape does actually represent their interfaces and components in like a hash kind of format. So in this regards, in certain, and I'll get into params with components. In certain params and components, you might see like a long number like this. Oops, numbers that long. You might see something like this. This can normally be this can actually be depicted. Actually, you'll see this more commonly in, say, uh, interactions. So let me demonstrate action for you. We can block items. Go out of the, where did that go? Hiding. So when I click, say, deposit all, you'll get a do action like this. You'll get this little nifty number here. You can represent, so this can be determined based off the interface ID and then the component. And this, so that's how they represent components. Now there are two types of components that are typically known. These are the higher order. So there are go back to here. Yes. So there are two types of components for the interfaces. Let's go to the backpack. So there are two types of components, like I said earlier. There are static and dynamic components. Static components is what you see here, layer 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Dynamic components are what you see here, the sprites. So any information regards to your inventory. I don't have it open. Where did that go? Oh, yeah, block that. There you go. So if you have like an item in your inventory, 2 cabbages, and the first item here will be cabbage. And these are all dynamic components created by CS2. They're a client scripting language, and I will get into that more later on down the road. But those are dynamic and static components. The dynamic components, um, yeah, can have. Oh, look at that. Okay. Well, not gonna do that point. But yeah, so there are two dynamic and static components, and you'll be able to recognize them based off layer 5 being a static, and then sprite 5 all the way down being dynamic components. The subcomponent represents the ID of that dynamic component. So the component index will be the static, interface will be the root interface 1473, and then subcomponent would be the dynamic component. The dynamic component, the heck? Can I not? It's probably blocking some on the path or something. But as you can see, if I click this, 0 and then 1, those are like the slot. You would normally see that as a slot for the inventory, but that's actually a subcomponent. 0 and 1 subcomponent. Back here. All right, interface. Now this is where it kind of gets cool. So the params for interface and components are miscellaneous data that are or data that help the client script determine whether or not information is associated with an interface, say. So again, you can clear this. As you can see here, each inventory slot appears to have params associated with it. So param 5, I'm not sure what the first param it is here. This param here appears to be the item ID. If we go to overlays, events, show all tooltips, and then hover over cabbage, you can see the item ID is 1965, which is also right here. Param 7542 also appears to be slot, and then param 7543 appears to be the inventory. You can read these by doing something like this. You can get the item ID, the slot, and the inventory ID, and then yeah. So there's many of different things too. For example, the action bar. I'm not going to get into the action bar, but the action bar has params linked with the next um, slots in interface ID and component ID and so forth. So it's like a linked list. They're treating the params as a linked list there. Next up, we can go into component properties. Check for questions. Next, whoops. Next up, you can go into interfaces and components for properties. Properties give you additional information for interactions. Yeah, they mainly focus primarily on interactions, whether you can drag, is it a dialogue action, is an option enabled, is use allowed, and what type of use is allowed, etc. Not it's kind of self-explanatory. Okay, self-explanatory kind of. This will return true if it's a dialogue action. Returns true if the interface is draggable. You can determine if say a component is selectable but doesn't have like actions like drop or examine. If you just if I can't find. Oh, oh. Some components are just selectable. You don't have particular options. It has a default option select. You can determine if they're interactable based off this property. Is option. I don't remember if it's 0 or 1. It's probably 1. Armor probably knows. But you can determine a lot from this too. Move on. So, you guys need a break, or can I keep going? Get some drinks or whatever. Because the next part is I'm going to be going over some of the bot with us API's uncommon features. Or everyone good to go? Okay. So I'm gonna briefly go over the quests achievements and how varps and varbits and their relationship between these are. Um, the APIs are quite small, but the abstract away all the complex of the config types I demonstrated earlier. So the quest API is fairly simple. You can do quest.byId and get 222, which is again plague's end. You can then just request like get quest points to get the requirement quest points for the quest. You can get all the dependent quests, and then you can iterate over those dependent quests or the required quests. Sorry, and then you can quest, and you can get all their dependent quests or required quests, etc. You can go over the skills. So iterate over the skills, make sure you have all the skills, etc., etc. This will get your player's skills. Um, Representing of locations, you can get start locations, so you can iterate over multiple different locations. And then I will demonstrate the nav system briefly. It's not much to it other than setting a coordinate, naving path, and then I'll go over the interruptible feature of it. But you could just pass in the coordinate for the locations here and then nav to that start location. You can also get the progress. Again, the quest has functions that you determine, like is it complete, is it started. Um, these functions will use the varbits that I demonstrated in the quest config type. Yeah. Okay, and the achievement API is quite similar. Due to a bit more complicated process of how achievements are completed, there's not much to expose here. get the name, the reward text, and the description, and then you can call this completed to check if the achievement is completed or not. Now, for more complex, I can't really demonstrate it on this account, but for example, the Chronicle Fragrance and Divination require a tutorial to complete. The Memorial of Guthics. The Memorial of Guthics has multiple stages to it. After the primary tutorial, you can complete more and more stuff, and this is represented as an achievement. So you can actually look up in the achievements, and I can't remember the achievement name. To be honest, I had it, I lost it. You can look up in the achievements, and then stuff that is not named, like this stuff you don't really need to worry about, but stuff like the descriptions, the names, to the varmint requirements, stuff. And this is, I guess, another good demonstration of finding varps or varmints. If you are struggling to find varps and varmints through, say, the variables tab, and here you can go through the quest tab to see what that. But more useful is if the particular thing you're looking for has some kind of achievement attached to it, whether or not that, then you can go through the achievements. For example, it was very difficult to find the soil box varmints, but fortunately, there was an achievement attached to the soil box, so we were actually able to get the varmint that represents the actual achievement itself and determine the upgrade state for that based off the achievement. So if you struggle with um, finding varmints in those kind of means, then you can always see, okay, is there an achievement I can look at or a quest I can look at to find those. Okay. That's a brief overview of the achievements, varps, and varmints and how they are in relationship. Now let's get into the event bus. Again, this might not be a long session of ciphers, but we're almost done here. The event bus then allows us, well, the event bus pretty much facilitates communication. So there's the game. So there's the events from the game to the client, and I think Cypher covered that in his initial scripting video. I'm specifically going to go over custom events. So events that you can publish to other scripts or your same script if you want to. So let's go over some examples for that. Let's go over a few examples I have for that. So the custom ah, so you can define your own classes and stuff, and then you can subscribe to your events yourself, and then offer up these. It requires an owner. This you have to comply with the subscribe to owner. Otherwise, when you unload and reload a script, then these events will not be removed, and you'll end up with double events when you're trying to process them. And then you can emit your custom event. Now, the way that we're emitting here only works specifically under the context that, oh, you're not emitting it to another script, because they're sandboxed environments essentially. So that prevents saying, so my custom event class, if it was in my script or another script developed by someone else, may not will be different representations of that class. But because we do emits like this, we can process specific events like this. So custom events are straightforward. Just create your own class, and then you can publish that, whatever. Make sure that you this option here is you're publishing it to specifically this script. So only this script will receive the event, and I'm about to go over why that is a thing. Slide here. So now one of my things, script communication. So this is something that I wanted to do for a long time, and I wrote some systems, but got occupied by other things. But most of it's here, and I'm gonna see what you guys can do with this because this would be cool. So the true power of these custom events comes into play when you're able to talk to other scripts, essentially. So there's multiple ways you can do that. You can do that through the JSON event, which just represents an event as a string that can be passed around to different scripts, or the property was changed event. So again, the JSON event is for more complex structures. If you want to pass like lists, maps, sets, custom objects, etc. Again, the property request change event is for simple string to string key pair events. So I'm going to demonstrate and try my best to explain script communication. So let's go back to here. Let's go back up to here. Okay, so we have a couple scripts here. Say we have Cypher script, and then we have my script. This isn't something Cypher wrote. I put this together for an example, but say we have two scripts. Cypher wrote a script, and I wrote a script. Um, and Cypher script is say random with us, the background script, and it catches butterflies, for example. So it catches butterflies. However, butterflies is not like Syrian spirits or Chronicle or Syrian spirits. They're interruptible actions, meaning that if you're harvesting a wisp or you're chopping a tree and you get a butterfly, when you click that butterfly, harvesting the wisp or chopping the tree is canceled. So we wanna be able to say, look, if random ones can work with any script on the SDN by any author, we want to be able to tell my script that this event, this action that is happening in the background is interruptible. So we can actually do that. We can actually communicate to other scripts like this. So we can, where is it? Here, so what we can do is we can create a property change event and say we interact with the butterfly, and we can say, okay, the old value is up here. So say we interacted with it, true, right? So we can publish this. So any script that is running, whether it's background or not, will receive this event if it's subscribed to that event. So then if we go to my script, I can subscribe to the property change event, and then I can check if that property wants to be changed. If that property is then being changed, I can react to that property, or I don't have to react to that property at all. So the control of these properties, or you can veto these kind of interrupted actions. If your script is in combat and you don't want another script to stop combat, then you don't have to react to that event at all. Then what I could do is I could simply just return on wait and not do cutting or adding logs to a browser, for example. So that's communication between one script to another, and you can do that. Now, this is there any questions with this? Okay, so the next thing that I'm gonna briefly go over script configurations and object serialization. Um, Apparently this has been confusing for people, so I will briefly go over this. So basic script configuration looks like, do I have the initialized? So it looks like this. It's you take the script config, you add a property to it, say, oh, we are waiting, and then you could save this script. Now people don't realize this, but the initialize function here, it actually loads the configuration. It actually subscribes to this here. Subscribes. It does a few things. It loads the configuration and and make sure that, oh, if we open the console, reopen the console. If we have settings open, reopen the settings, and then it parses. And then the actual initialize function Boolean returns whether this script will be active or not. So you can force scripts to be active or not. A lot of people, what I see is a lot of people just have this return false or true. And then what happens is that the initialize function doesn't actually load the configuration. so state isn't saved or so if you want to do it this way, then you have to manually go call load yourself. So you have to call this in order for it to load, and then you can do whatever you want with whatever is saved in the configurations, uh, like loading it like this. So that means now you can call load configuration and then parse those properties to that. Does that make sense? Um, this is relying on the script author. Are you talking about events, Gibson? Uh, um, so there's again multiple ways that you can store information in the configuration file. Key value pairs you've seen here. The key value pair is just a string. You could do JSON. You can do JSON and then convert your objects to JSON. If you're doing JSON and you're accustomed to the builder, don't set pretty printing. Just so that it's all on one line, etc. So there's multiple ways, and then you can use object serialization, and I'll briefly go over that. CipherScript has this. So for object serialization, you can have a record. Java 20, I believe, has this. Yeah. So you can have a record that creates getters and setters for each of the membered states. Then you can implement the serializable. This is just a marker class for this. So it represents this class can be serialized down and then deserialized back up. And then what you can do is you can save this script by writing that and then writing the state object. And then you want to make it a single line, so you can base64 encode it, code this to the string, and then reading it back is fairly straightforward. You get the base64 encoded string, make sure it's not null, get the decode that from the byte array, throw that into a byte input stream, pass it into an object input stream so that you can read that object back into trusty old CipherSpot state, which is this. Okay, a little bit more complex topic, so I'll just double check questions. Okay, so if you were talking about Gibson back, for script communication, uh, if another script is publishing an event that your script wants to react to, then you have to subscribe to that event right here. And you must understand, okay, this is the simplest form. If say I want to send a JSON event where the structure is a bit more complicated, then you have to collaborate with that other scripter so that your scripts are supported in that way, that your supported events. This is the securest way of doing it because I don't want, say, you to be able to alter the state of another script without that other script being able to say, no, I don't want to. Because it'll run into problems where you're able to stop a script or alter a script state, and then that script kills the body. So we want you to be able to stop that from happening. So if you subscribe to a property change event, and then I send a specific property, and you listen to that property, you have the power to ignore that request. Yeah. So this will pick up everything. So if you don't know what events there, you can just take the event and then you can get the property name from that event. And then you can get the old value of that property if the event publisher, that other script, is okay, and then you can get the new value. You can also get the you can also get the source. So you can cast this source to an immutable script like this, and then you can get information on who is sending it, script name, the author of the script, the definition. Is it a background script? You can print to that script if you want to. You can get the configurations. You can read the configurations. You can't modify those configurations, but you can say you can get the is active, or you can get any state that they have. Is the console open, etc. So you can do a lot with the source, and then you can read, like you can get information on who's sending it, etc. Does that make sense? Okay. um, there was one more thing I wanted to mention about events. Yeah, so you can actually publish to a specific script if you know the script's name, and you don't want to just send your event to every script that's currently loaded. You can specifically get the script that you want based off the script's name. You check whether it's active, and then you can publish to that script specifically, so that no other script gets that event, only that script. So there's that too. Okay. Okay. I'm going to briefly discuss the looping script. A lot of you already probably know what the looping script, the ticking script, maybe not as many as you. And then I'm going to discuss the actual script class, because I'm going to also briefly go over the script class and how how threads operate on it. So you all know the looping script just keeps running your code every X milliseconds. The ticking script, on the other hand, runs your script every time the game receives an end of server tick response. So what this does is that there's a packet that RuneScape sends back to their client that says, "Oh, we've finished processing everything, and this is the end of the tick." The ticking script will execute your script code based on that. This is I believe Cypher uses this for some of his bossing scripts, so it might be better for bossing scripts than anything other. But both the looping and the ticking script both extend the script class, so I want to go over. Spelled that wrong. Sorry. I want to go over what the script class is doing, and the threads, and how maybe you guys can control the lifetime of your own scripts. Just a disclaimer that this is not recommended for people who do not know what they're doing when it comes to threads or scripts. I want to briefly go over this because there could be some really cool ideas around this. So I wanted to allow as much flexibility when it came to actual script lifetime as possible. So I allowed this to happen. See if I can't find. Yeah, here we go. Custom script. So essentially, the looping script will extend the script class. So if I go here and go to looping, here it extends the script class. Effectively, what ends up happening is that the script class itself is an immutable script and is also a runnable. Because the custom lifetime, say the script is extending this, it's also a runnable. So this is running on. So when you start this script, it's going to be passed to a thread, a virtual thread in this case for Java, and it's going to run the run method once. And that's it. So you have the power to control when this thread finishes and exits, essentially. So one of the things you can do is you can say, well, if I don't have what's this, logs, if I'm burning logs and I run out of logs and then I go interact with last preset, then I want to wait till I have logs, any kind of log. That's what category 22 is, any kind of log. And then after that, we time out, say after 30 seconds, and then our backpack doesn't contain logs after doing the preset, then we ran out of logs. Or if the backpack contains logs, then we want to keep running. So we can do a recursive. This may not be the best solution for this, but this is just an example. We can do a recursive callback to run and then run that whole process again. However, if we do not have those logs at all, then the script just finishes. It just ends. The script will remain active until you deactivate it, and its events events will still be processed on the script. So you can override the initialize method and subscribe to, say, the property change event. Okay, don't want any of this really. And if the property name is equals to, say, is active, then we want to get the new value, and then we can actually set the active state of the script. So if this becomes false, then we can just set the script state to false. Now, then the script just is interrupted. Like it's no longer active. Now, because you have control over this again, and I want to iterate this, this is safe because if say I try to stop your script, you have the power to say no to that. So if you're in combat or if you're in a dangerous zone, you can actually publish back to that script by doing event bus.publish event.get source, and then new property change is active, and then you can really send anything you want back to that script saying nope, I'm in a dangerous zone or whatever, and I can't stop the script. But for the custom script lifetime, this will be run like a runnable where you do new thread, pass in the script. That's run once, and then the thread ends. Unless you want to do like a while loop in here, because if we go to the looping script, you can see in the looping script, it's also just using the run method, but instead of this, we iterate over the script. If we're not logged in, sleep. If we're paused, sleep. Then do the loop as long as the script is active. So if you do want to do this custom lifetime, it is also recommended, I don't do it here, but it is also recommended that you um, conform to the standard of the is active. So if we're active, so if we're not active, so if someone clicks the start and stop arrows at the top of this to play and stop, then your script must conform to the is active standard, where if it stops, then we want to stop the script too. Okay? But it allows you complete control over the lifetime of the script, and I don't yeah. You mean for items, Gibson? So I briefly covered categories in the config type. Um, actually, we're done that. Okay. So I'll briefly go over categories again before we do the client, the CS2. An example. So each item is categorized, like I said earlier. An example of this would be my water feed script here. So if we go up to the looting mechanism, and you can see the complexity of the query, but nevertheless, you can actually say, oh, look, okay, all charms are category 1494. So you can ground out inquiry just for category 1494. So it'll see all charms on the ground. Then you could do OR and create a new and specific items. And in my particular case, these were category 0, so miscellaneous, which did not help because I didn't want all of the category 0. But then you can go down. I don't remember what this is. But then fish type food. So if an enemy drops, because I think they dropped bass. I can't remember what they dropped. Oh, actually, this might be raw. So they did drop raw shark. So this would pick up any raw fish type. Clue scrolls, anything under category 4241 would be clue scrolls. Easy, medium, hard. Um, more fish types. Okay, so this is cooked. This is raw. But you can do that. So that's the power of categories. Um, Okay, I'm gonna go over client script 2, but this is one of the um, more powerful features of bot with us. The client script 2 is a language developed by RuneScape itself. It's not a publicly known thing. Um, it's specifically private. Private to their game itself. Um, Scripts can interact with the server indirectly. Server can tell the client to execute a script. It handles player clicks and other stuff. It is a critical component to handling any UI changes and logic, and it has utility scripts, etc. All right, and one of my favorite things I've added. Oops, invoking CS2. So bot with us does support something, um, and we can run CS2 scripts ourselves forcefully. So so CS2 manages a lot of the user interface, the interfaces and components, and it manages the user inputs to utility scripts, and it can can't remember if I did an example on button clicks through CS2 or not, but I'll see. I'm going to primarily focus on the user input and the utility scripts, because what CS2 does is it monitors user input and inputs those, and then renders those, and then uses CS2 to render those on the interfaces and components. There's utility scripts that return strings or any values that you guys can use by executing the CS2 script. An example of this, Cypher data is for the action bar. He executes this to calculate the ability times and all that fun stuff. But let's go into examples now. So one of the examples I have here is the vial collector. The vial collector. So when you want to execute a script, you create a script of the ID, and I believe we have a dump of scripts that you guys can look at to figure out what scripts you want. I don't know if that's 923. Is there a question? But there is a bunch of scripts, and it is a bit more complicated. You can always ask one of the staff members to help figure out a script that you may want to execute. Because sometimes it's easier to execute a script than it is to code like 100 lines just to do something that a script can do just as easily. So input scripts. This is for specifically like say files water. If you go open the bank and you do withdraw X, this little input dialog. Um, this is an input. This is handled through this scripting language that RuneScape has. And what you can do now in bot with us is that once you detect this interface is open, you can define the input script itself, which takes a string of the value, um, and then you can define, and then the key press bound to this. So there's a script that says, look, this is when a user hits the 2 or the N key for million, this script is executed. So you can take that script and you can execute in your scripts that script itself. So for example, if we want to go to the portable well and we want to rapidly take vials out of the portable well, we can do that using scripts. So we can filter, wait till the interface is open, then we can we can execute that script with a value of 28, so your entire inventory. And this will run that CS2 script that normally would run when you type 2, 3, 4, whatever, 3, 4, 3, 2, etc. And then after that is invoked, it will wait till that script is done running and then go on to the next one. So this is blocking, by the way. Then when that's finished typing, you want to hit enter. So you want to do 1 and then hit enter. That it takes 1, whatever, out. Instead of sending key inputs like through your Windows machine or your keyboard itself, we go a level lower and we want to, a level deeper, and we want to execute the script that would then be ran when you would press a key. So in this case, 84 and -1, this would just execute enter. This would fake enter on the interfaces. And that's practically input manipulation using CS2 scripts. Now, different input fields could have different CS2 scripts and different key press scripts associated with them. An example would be archaeology, the pylon interface. This method will not work for that. You would have to find that yourself. So that's one way you can execute scripts, but it just doesn't. CS2 is not only useful for input either. If we go to so one of the things too is 277 script 277. Not going to open that, but this script is just a utility script. It's like a public string method that get bait name, or in this case, it'll just be script 277. It'll take some number, and it'll switch that number like this. This is what the script will do. This is what it will do. So it'll case 0, and it'll return, say, I don't know, fishing bait, whatever. So this is what the script essentially does. And there's many utility scripts that you can look to find. There's scripts that return varbit values or varp values. There's scripts that return RC values or other strings, etc. And what you can do now is you can take that utility script and you can execute that yourself. This script now takes an integer for the value of 1 and it returns a string. Now, scripts have the ability to return multiple values. Botvos does support this. You just have to tell it that you want, say, multiple values returned. But for simplicity's sake, when you execute this script and you pass 1, you can get the return value and then print that to the thing. So I can demonstrate this. Yes. You can execute the script and I can demonstrate it. Make sure okay. So if I open this clear and I run the dev script, you can see that it's returning worm for bait. If I change this, if I change this value to say 2, rebuild the script, it'll take a reasonable amount of time. And then reload the script and execute it again, it'll return mega. So it'll return different things. And that's the power of kind of utility scripts in CS2. if there's information or if the bot doesn't support something, you could see CS2 script will return that value for you. This is used for many other things, like, for example, and I don't have the best example I have for button clicks through CS2 would probably be the auto login mechanism, where it clicks the play and the play now button. So CS2 does execute scripts when you click buttons on interfaces, and just like the key press, you can actually fire off those scripts like so that it would fake like a key press. But there's not much utility to that in regards to clicking for scripts, because you could just use do action. Most of it's based off do action, and you want an actual server response to from the click. So that might not always be the best case scenario. Okay. Is there any questions with that? That I know scripts is a little bit more heavy on code wise, but let me know if there's questions for the scripts. Otherwise, we'll move on to the last thing. This will probably take less than 5 or 10 minutes, maybe a bit longer depending on questions. Then we're done. So the last thing that I want to discuss is just navigation, just how to generally use navigation. So navigation is simply just, it allows you to walk large distances using the fastest path possible, thanks to Armor, since he wrote this system. Credits to him. It'll use most items, lodestones, tree gnome networks, glider networks, and much, much more. Basically, and I have multiple examples for this. Let's go into something. Okay, let's go back to my water fiend script. My water fiend script practically just bangs. Cool thing with this is that I use the fort's cathedral, or the fort's chapel, for this, because it has a bank chest right in there, and it has the altar for prayer, and I don't have to do anything special thanks to Armor again. Let's go up to my states and do banking. So it's nothing very complex. It's simply, you have the bank area, which can be whatever you want, a rectangle, a circle, a single coordinate, blah 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 blah, and then you can just call movement transverse nav path, and then you can resolve creating a path to that bank area. Now, a few things. I notice people don't check a lot of this. So if you want to do this, transverse will return multiple different states. If it's idle, finished, failed, is it continuing? If there's no path found, or if it's interrupted. If the path is finished, then we actually rarely reach the bank, and so we could do all our bank logic if the path is successful or not. In this case, it prays at the altar, does things, loads the preset, and then moves back to water fiend. Same with the water fiend state. Very, very simple, even less code. We can navigate to the water fiend area. All I have to do is give it a coordinate inside the water fiends, and I'll show you any trick too that I. Oh, maybe not. I don't care about this account. So this is going to be 100% banned, but whatever. So you can go to the map. You can select a location where you want your script, or where you want to walk to, and then you can see that coordinate at the marker tile right here. So you can select, and you can go into like dungeons. Can I select the dungeon? Ancient cavern. Hey, water fiends. Anyway, you can go back, and we can select. Oh, I want to go to water fiends, and you can see the coordinate right here. So there's a quick way. I'm gonna close that. So there's that quick way of finding coordinates that you can nav to. Bank, water fiends. Now I have another example. For example, Blue Dragon Fighter. Same kind of idea. Do combat. Whoops, nope. We want to do banking, so we transverse to the tab early bank. If it's finished, then we can do our bank, interact lock counters, load last preset, do all our interaction and unloading presets. Make sure we have food. That's cooked food. Then move back to Dragons. So then move back to Dragons is very simple as well. Move back to Dragons. It's very simple. Simply and this one uses the agility shortcuts. Like the nav system will pick up on your agility level, use agility, use the shortcuts if you have levels for them, if it's the fastest path, make sure it's, and then we can go back to combat. And that'll just do it. So very simple transversal stuff. Let's see if I remember how I did this. So, however, if you need to navigate and you're in combat or there's a criteria that you want to stop, you can simply do transverse. Oh, you simply create a nav path. Sorry, nav. Resolve location. Get the random walk there, and then you can do dot interrupt, and then you can pass in zeta. Yeah, you can pass in a lambda for interrupt, which returns true. I don't remember what this is. Okay, you can get a bunch of different stuff in regards to should use teleports. So you can do, like for example, self that is in combat, or you can do this. And if we're in combat, then we want to interrupt. So this will create a path that then you can go movement.transverse path. Make sure we want to check the transversal event. I can't spell. There we go. So we can check the transversal event state. If it's finished, then go back to combat. But in this particular case now that we added an interrupt lambda expression, the event could walk halfway, but then if we all of a sudden enter combat, then it'll just stop, and then you can process that. In this particular case, if it gets interrupted, this state will become interrupted. So you can manage, if it's finished, then do whatever you need, do whatever. Um, otherwise, if it's interrupted, then you can handle the interruption appropriately. And that's pretty much it. If you guys want me to go over something one more time, or if you have another topic or questions, let me know. For what? For the coordinate you pass into the Dragon area? So the Dragon area is a circle. I give it like the center, X, Y, Z. You don't really have to worry about the Z. And then a radius of 2. And then you can get random walkable coordinates. So this will pick out a random coordinate that is, actually walkable. Yeah. So the quests, so it's actually very, very simple. If you want to use the quest API, it's simple. You can simply just call if.quest.isComplete, and then do your logic here. It's a bit more complicated. This will do all the varbit checks for you, and and everything that is required for it. Did that answer your questions? No? Any other questions? Otherwise, we are done. Okay, so the mark feature I introduced was to primarily save on memory. So in this particular case, what the mark does is it saves everything to the left. So everything here is saved. So if I decide, oh, I want to add additional item based on a condition, I can go if backpack, if backpack contains, say, some random item, and I want to pick up an item based on this condition, then I can do, what did I call that query? Then I can do something like items.reset, and then do or round out query, blah, blah, blah. Don't need mark in this case here. And then say, it doesn't matter what I do. So what this is doing is it saves everything to the left, and then appends the or here to the query. Now, in a lot of cases, you do not want this to, you don't want this item to happen all the time. So when you begin querying again, if I can find combat, when we go here, what we want to do is we want to reset the query. Right? And why uh-oh. Okay. Well, ground items might be a little lame. Anyway, that is primarily the idea. Is that you're able to call reset and then results. And what reset will do is it'll actually remove this and then keep all of this kind of thing. Any more questions? So yeah, so you want to make sure that you do quest that is present, because if you pass in an ID and that quest doesn't exist, then you're gonna be getting a null pointer exception. So in my example, I check. So I check if the quest is present, and then I can call get, and then I can operate on that quest. There's different forms of lambda expressions you can use on this. So if present, and then quest, and then you can operate on quest like this. You can map it if you just want that. So you can quest name, print out kind of thing. It's not what I had in mind, but I guess that works. You can map quest to whatever you want beforehand, and so the optional just forces you guys to ensure that the quest exists instead of crashing your game or trying to have to spend time debugging what was going on or exception. All right. Any more questions? If people joined late and you want me to go over something that they missed, you can totally ask me to do that and I'll go over it again. Otherwise, this is it. If you guys learned stuff, yeah. All right.